Hi everybody, this is a warning ahead of time. There is a lot of work to do in class today. I am guessing you won't get all of it done, but it will be due by the time you make it to me next class. So make sure you are working on this and getting it all completed because your packet will be due not today but next class. So, first up, our objectives. Students will use the indicative to express habitual actions, and your essential question, how do you express cause and effect? Go ahead and write down your objective and your essential question in your Cornell notes now. Go ahead and pause the video. Okay, our upcoming projects, we have Don Quixote due on December 20th, and for homework, we have page 84 in your workbook. Finish any worksheets needed, and your packet is due next class. Our skills remain the same. Our Don Quixote project's due on the 20th of December, and we'll go ahead and start on Bellwork 7-8. Complete the sentences with the correct form of the verb. Last class, we talked about subjunctive with future actions. So here we have tan pronto como, which is a subjunctive indicator. So terminar in the subjunctive is going to be terminé. Cuando, again, is a subjunctive indicator. Llegar would be lleguen, because it's my friends. I'm not going to leave until. Dejar would be deje. It stops raining. You all can stay until. Regresar is regresen. My parents return. After, graduarse would be graduarme. Alright, I think about taking some vacation. There is no change of subject, so this is going to remain in the indicative, actually in the infinitive, because there's no, you can't have two conjugated verbs back to back. Hope that did not trick you up when you were doing your work. We're going to go ahead and take our Cornell notes. So, indicative with habitual or past actions. Our first question is, which indicators are used with the indicative when the verb refers to a habitual action? Well, in our notes right here, we see that we use the indicative with en cuanto, cuando, después de que, hasta que, en tan pronto como, which were all the ones we studied last class, when the verb refers to a habitual action, because we know habitual actions deal with the imperfect. Cuando visitábamos a mis parientes, mis primos y yo siempre jugábamos. Now, in the last class, we talked about future actions, so that's going to deal with the subjunctive. But when we're talking about past actions, preterite and imperfect, we don't use that subjunctive. So when my relatives used to visit my cousins and I, we always used to play. Or when we'd visit my relatives, my cousins and I would always play. Tan pronto como termino un examen, me gusta escuchar música. It said to write down all the examples, so I hope you're writing these down. As soon as I finish the exam, I like to listen to music. Again, there's no change of subject in that one, so there cannot be any subjunctive. The next thing is, what tense do I use when describing completed actions in the past? Well, the indicative is the tense that you would use when describing completed actions in the past, and here's an example of that. En cuanto llegamos a la clase, empezó el examen. As soon as we arrived in class, the exam started. There's no doubt, because we did it. So it happened, and it's over with. Therefore, we're going to use the llegamos is in the indicative, present tense, and empezó is in the preterite. No me interesaba la historia hasta que fui al Perú. I wasn't interested in history until I went to Peru. Since you already did it, there's no doubt that it occurred. So, interesaba, I wasn't interested in history. That's a description in the past. Until I went, one time, preterite, to Peru. Después que Alicia me contó lo que pasó, me sentí mejor. After Alicia told me what happened, I felt better. Contó is in the preterite because she told me what happened. Pasó, I felt, sentí. All of these things are completed actions in a series, therefore they're all preterite. Then it says, write down the example comparing the two tenses. These are the two tenses being compared. The first one, tan pronto como llegué, todo el mundo se fue. As soon as I arrived, everyone left. Llegué is in the preterite because you arrived one time and it's over with. Everyone left. That's also past action. So both of those are in the preterite. That's completed in the past. Okay, tan pronto como llegue, vamos a preparar la cena. As soon as I arrive. So that's something that hasn't happened yet. Vamos a preparar la cena. We're going to prepare dinner. Because it hasn't happened yet, it might not happen, and therefore they use the subjunctive, llegue. It is very important that you realize that this is all what I like to call sequence of tenses. You cannot have the preterite and the imperfect go with the subjunctive. You'd have to have the imperfect subjunctive, which you have not learned yet. Okay. Go ahead and open your book to page 302. We are going to do the indicative with habitual or past actions. Alright, this activity says complete the paragraph with the correct forms of the verbs in parentheses. All I need you to do is write the correct form of the verb. I don't need you to write the whole thing out. Alright, so let's go through this very carefully. Estaba. Well, you should already know because estaba is in the past. What's going to happen right here? Because estaba is in the past, it has already occurred and there's no doubt, so therefore llegar is going to be in the preterite. We were really excited when I was really excited when I arrived in Peru. Those happened, or Ecuador. Why do I keep saying Peru? Okay, it's a completed action, so it needs to be in the preterite. As soon as I got off the plane, I looked for a restaurant. See how I looked for? Busqué is in the preterite, so guess what's going to happen right here? We're going to have me bajé. It happened, it's over with, it's going to need to be in the preterite. Seg moves to the front, changes to me. Yo form bajé of that verb in the preterite. In the restaurant, I thought. After we finish eating, I will look for a map. So there's the future tense. That tells you that it has to go with the subjunctive. Terminemos. Because it's nosotros form. I want to go to Otavalo before we leave. Aprovecharé. I would like to go for a visit in the museums of Quito, or I would enjoy them. Since that's in the future, the one in front of it needs to be vayamos, subjunctive. Tomé. Later, I took the bus to Otavalo. When I saw the handicrafts, I wanted to buy something. Wanted is in the past tense. So ver needs to be in a past tense. I saw them one time, so it's preterite be. I walked through the whole market until I found. Walked, found. These are series of events. Encontrar needs to be in the preterite. Encontré. I found a sweater made of wool for my mama. Okay. Page 303, activity 43. Again, we're not writing the whole sentences out. We're just writing the words. That's why there's so little space on your Cornell note paper. It says, read this part of a conversation between a Spanish teacher and a exchange student. Complete the sentences with the correct forms of the verbs in parentheses. Remember, again, I'll say it 100 times. If you see the future, it has to go with the subjunctive. If you see the preterite or the imperfect, there has to be an indicative verb after your con tal de que or whatever adverbial phrase. So when. Okay, there's your adverbial phrase. And I'm going to scan through. Okay, fuiste. Okay, so that's telling me there's a preterite. So we need to have an indicative verb up here. When you arrived in Lima, did you go to the house of a Peruvian student? That's telling me it needs to be preterite. Llegaste. Did you live with a family until your trip ended? Viviste is preterite. Therefore, this needs to be an indicative verb, either preterite or imperfect. So, terminar, terminó, until your trip, which is the subject, ended. Hablábamos, that's the imperfect. We used to talk only in Spanish after we arrived in the U.S. How many times did you arrive? One time. So it's preterite, salimos. We did not know how many classes we were going to take until we spoke with the directora. Okay, we didn't know. Íbamos. Two imperfect verbs. How many until we spoke with a teacher. Hablamos, or a principal rather. That's preterite. Because you spoke to her one time. After I rested a little bit, we had time to get to know the city. There's your preterite, so that tells you up here we need preterite or imperfect. So after I rested a little bit, You rested one time, descansé. We went to the museum as soon as we found a map. Okay, fuimos is in the preterite. As soon as we found it one time, so it needs to be preterite, encontramos. You will have a lot of experiences to tell your kids when you're older. There's a future tense verb. If you see a future tense verb, you know that this one needs to be in the subjunctive. So seas, because you're still doing the to form. I always bring gifts for my family when I return home. When I return, you see a regular old indicative, so a regular old indicative. Vuelvo. Okay, this is where we start moving into our worksheets. As always, I will do the first one, and then you guys have to finish up the rest. Read the statement and then write A for pasado, B for future, or C for habitual. So it says, as soon as I get up in the mornings, I take a bath, I get dressed, and I eat breakfast. That's not future, it's not past, so it must be C, habitual. Okay. Here, complete the statements with the correct form of the words in the box. Lograr, I think, is to achieve, if I'm not mistaken. Let me double check before I tell you wrong. Yes, to achieve. Comer means to eat, levantarse is to get up, hablar is to speak, and llegar is to arrive. So usually I arrive at my house before 2 in the afternoon. As soon as I blink something, I start my homework. As soon as I eat something. Okay. Now that we know that comer needs to go here, we need to figure out what tense it needs to be in. So usually I arrive. As soon as I eat something, I start my homework. Okay, there's no change of subject. So I'm going to put the indicative. Alright, next. Complete Janet's interview with her classmates with the correct forms of the verbs in parentheses. What plans do you have after graduation? After we leave from graduation, my family and I are going to celebrate. That's the future. So this needs to be the subjunctive. Alright, and then combine the phrases to make sentences. Be sure to use the correct form of the verbs. Okay. So, a menos que Ramon. Alright, so a menos de que. A menos de que means unless, and it goes with it's a subjunctive adverbial. So unless Ramon has studied, he will not pass the exam. So haya estudiado, that's the present perfect subjunctive. Él no aprueba. You know what? This one's not supposed to be there. No aprueba el examen. Unless he has studied, he will not pass the test. I know what I did here. Okay. Unless he has studied. Yeah. Subjunctive. This is supposed to be future tense. He will not pass. So, aprobar. Aprobará el examen. Okay, let me put in my accent marks before you guys freak out. Ramon has one. Él has one. And aprobará has one. Okay. But remember, when you're doing the future, or the subjunctive, you have to have the future. And when you do the present tense, you can do preterite and perfect. Any indicative tenses go together. But whenever you have he will not pass the test, you're going to need the future tense there. So that other verb has to be in the subjunctive, even if it's present perfect subjunctive. Okay, you can go ahead and pause the video and complete that, or you also have aplicación 2 to do, and an escribamos to do, a lectura to do, and an escritura to do today. All of those must be completed today. or not today, by next class. We have addressed all of these standards, and there's a 3-2-1 closure on Edmodo. You can work on Don Quixote, work on your homework, which is page 84, finishing your worksheets, and your packets due next class. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask me. Thanks.